where the fight for gay rights and minority sexual rights turned into this demand, this claim that there was no such thing as biological sex. The argument for gay rights was won by saying, we're just like the rest of you. It was also won by saying, you know, we just want to live and let live. Yet the gender ideologues have done something totally different. They've said, you don't have the right to have your own say in this. We are right, and you have to agree with us.
Prepare for a no-holds-barred showdown as Piers Morgan and Douglas Murray unleash their fiery wit on the circus of modern identity politics. In this blistering interview, they roast the absurdities of self-identity, questioning society's leap from reality to fantasy, schools indulging kids identifying as animals, just the opening act. Piers and Douglas tackle the chaos in women's sports and the slippery slope of self-ID laws. With razor-sharp critiques, they warn of the potential unraveling of civil rights progress. It's time to start protecting women's rights, children's innocence, and scientific truth.
Well, joining me now is the veteran LGBT activist and human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell, political journalist Ava Santina, and by the best-selling author and conservative commentator Douglas Murray. Well, Douglas, you're safely over there in the United States, so let me start with you before the fun starts here. This stuff reads like a joke, but it's really not funny when you get into the weeds of it. This is limitless self-identity gone bonkers.
Yeah, it's the very stupid results of a very stupid ideology being rolled out by very stupid people. Basically, everything has come unstuck in recent years by the ever-expanding alphabet acronym people, where the fight for gay rights and minority sexual rights turned into this demand, this claim that there was no such thing as biological sex. As Peter Tatchell and others well know, the argument for gay rights was won by saying, we're just like the rest of you. It was also won by saying, you know, we just want to live and let live. Yet the gender ideologues have done something totally different. They've said, you don't have the right to have your own say in this. We are right, and you have to agree with us. They say, we're here, and instead of saying we're here, we're queer, and just get used to it, it's we're here, and as a result, biological reality doesn't exist. Well, clearly, this very, very idiotic ideology is causing havoc. Just today, Piers, there's another tape from a school in Scotland where some poor boy is having to explain to his teacher that there's only two biological sexes and that the gender woo-woo stuff is nonsense. And yet again, it's the student having to educate the teacher because the teacher has been indoctrinated into stupidity due to the gender ideologues.
OK, Ava, you're laughing. Why?
Well, it's just quite amusing, really. I mean, we're talking about children that are 12 and 13. I mean, when I was at school, I had a girl who identified as a horse, but not in this sort of like problematic way that we're now labelling it. She didn't actually think she was a horse. She was just quite strange and walked around and, you know...
But nobody at the school then, no teachers would have tolerated that in the way that this is now having to be tolerated.
No teacher would have tolerated bullying of that child. And that's what this teacher in Sussex has done. They've said it's not acceptable for boys in that class to take the mickey out of someone who's obviously clearly just a child and they're exploring their imagination.
Who says they're a cat?
Yes, but... Piers, they're 12.
And is actually interfering with the lessons by talking in cat language, including meowing, and if people don't go along with this, refusing to cooperate.
Yes.
That is not just having a bit of fun being a cat. That is actually assuming the identity of an animal that this person is not, and then insisting everybody else conform to it. That is madness.
That's not what's happening. What's happening is there's a child who's slightly more imaginative than their peers, and they are acting out this sort of fallacy, and that's fine. But to make it about trans, this is where it gets dangerous, OK? The Telegraph...
Oh, it's very damaging to trans people. I agree.
Right, OK.
I agree with that.
The reason it's most damaging, the Telegraph have been reporting this, it's up 400% in the last couple of years, them reporting trans issues.
The circus of self-identity has spiralled into absurdity, where biological reality is tossed aside like yesterday's news. This ideology demands blind allegiance to fantasies, insisting everyone plays, along with delusions of grandeur. When schools entertain the whims of children identifying as animals, it exposes the lunacy infecting society. It's time to reclaim common sense and reject the madness masquerading as progressive thought.
I don't understand why they've got this weird obsession with going into
Let me explain why.
classrooms.
Let me explain why.
No, it's quite gross.
Let me explain why. When you have in women's sport 6'4" biological males destroying biological females at elite sport level in swimming pools, on racetracks, in other sports, that's when it becomes a full frontal assault on women's rights to fairness and equality.
Yeah.
And when you include them going into dressing rooms and so on and mixing with biological females, then there's a safety issue. When you have, as we had in Scotland, a male rapist identifying at his trial as a woman to get put into a woman's prison and being sent there by the female boss of Scotland at the time, who's now obviously in her own troubles, that is why this is happening. Kids are watching all this stuff, and as kids do, they want a piece of the action.
No, Piers, don't be ridiculous. There is nothing, there's no similarity between a child wanting to be a cat when they're 12 years old and someone competing in the Olympics.
Oh, there is.
There is
Peter,
no comparison.
Peter, you and I have had a lot of civilised conversations about all this, right? And I want to continue that. I don't think that the trans community gets helped at all by any of this, right? But I don't think it's the media obsessing. I think what you're seeing is, as the trans community get ever more active and populous, if you like, for want of a better phrase, and their activists get more aggressive, when they go to battle on things like women's sport, they're losing everyone and they're piling mockery onto the trans community.
If we can go back to the Telegraph article,
yeah,
it's quite mischievous. Out of the, I don't know, million or more pupils in our schools, they come up with 5 examples. 5 examples out of a million. Now, that's wrong. I agree it's wrong. But, as Ava says, the kids are just acting out fantasies. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be Robin Hood.
But that's fine. That's fine. But the schools should not be tolerating it.
But the schools are not.
A teacher should not be saying, if you believe that women have vaginas and men have penises, you have to leave the school. That is complete nonsense.
No.
Right?
In this particular case, the Telegraph cited this handful of examples. They were by teachers, individual teachers. They were not school policy. And in at least one case, the school disowned the teacher and the policy and said that it wouldn't happen again.
But what about this case in Rye College?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are some examples of excesses. But on the basis of those exceptions, you can't make a generalised attack upon the school system and suggest that all our kids are being propagandised in this way, because it's simply not
when you hear
happening.
that teacher, I think, to bring Douglas back in, when you hear that teacher, there's clear evidence of what we've all been fearing has been going on, which is a teacher caught on tape literally spewing nonsensical gender ideology propaganda.
But one teacher?
Yes.
Only one teacher?
One teacher,
tens of thousands?
Well, hang on. One teacher caught on tape. Right? There have been many other instances of this being reported, but no one's actually had it on tape. It's a bit like, I would liken it to the Partygate scandal, when we finally got a video of the people having what was clearly a party. There have been lots of rumours about it. So now we have a teacher clearly on tape doing this
But
stuff.
it's not official school policy.
If I may,
Schools across the country are
well,
not...
she's still, to my knowledge,
this.
she is still working at that school. Douglas.
The transgender ideology has morphed from a plea for acceptance into a full-blown assault on biological reality and common sense. It's not just harmless child's play when biological males dominate women's sports or when rapists exploit self-ID laws. This madness has infiltrated our schools, with teachers indoctrinating children into rejecting basic biology. The few recorded incidents likely represent a larger hidden problem.
If I may, first of all, Ava rather unfortunately misspoke earlier when she said that the schoolgirl in question was acting out a fallacy. I think you meant a fantasy. But actually she is acting out a fallacy.
Thanks ever so
fallacy.
much. But do you know what I find fascinating?
You're right with fallacy.
Do you know what's fascinating about
which
Douglas?
has been propagated. A fallacy which has been propagated by gender ideologues and is doing profound damage to gay people, among others, in our society, as well as women.
Like
and let me
you
explain
ever
very
cared.
quick. Let me
Ever cared.
explain very quickly why. I can't quite hear you. I can hear you muttering something. Let me quickly explain why. A poll that just got published in the United States showed that among the general population, support for gay marriage has been starting to decline in the last year. Why is that? It's because the arguments that actually brought about liberal rights for all minorities in the last few decades have started to get turned on their head and turned against people. What is the source of that? It is the gender ideology movement. What is the tripwire for the general public? It is children. It is people learning that their children are being taught nonsensical things. It is being seen by the wider public, most of whom are heterosexual and don't need to identify as cis or anything else. It is being seen from that vantage point as the LGBTQIA+ movement losing control of itself. And so a backlash is starting. And the backlash is coming because people are lying to children and are using children for medical experiments. There's nothing funny about that. There's nothing that should cause levity in that. It should be treated by adults seriously.
OK,
no,
Ava?
So, Douglas, it's really important, actually, all of that point that you've just brought up, it's very on brand for you because, you know, you like to stoke fear. You've actually made a career out of it. I'll take you back to your book, The Strange Death of Europe, and you made a big fright, you know, you frightened the entire public about your thoughts on Europe, and we ended up in Brexit. You weren't the sole contributor to that, but you were a big voice.
Can we stick on to the
Ava,
theme?
I will. And then, you know, now we're talking about LGBTQ.
If I may say so
and you're
very
creating...
quickly,
Hang on, you spoke. I'm speaking.
No,
I'm speaking.
I'll
you spoke.
reply.
This is, I mean...
And I'll reply.
Hello. I haven't finished.
Let Ava speak, please, Douglas.
Now, back on the trans issue, when you're talking about LGBTQ, what you've just done there is basically say that the whole of America, who have historically had a problem with gay marriage, are now turning on it because a couple of children in a classroom in Sussex want to be a cat. If you can't see the ridiculousness in that argument, I can't help you.
The bigger issue is there is no such thing as gender ideology. We all have gender identities. You identify as a man, and I fully respect you.
Well, no, hang on. I don't identify as a man. I was born a biological male.
Yes.
That's where this whole thing goes rogue. I'll bring you back in, Douglas, and want to say. That's where the whole debate goes rogue. You were born a biological male. You were born a biological female. Douglas, biological male. This is just a fact. Right?
No.
Once you start saying there are hundreds of genders and you can identify as anything you want, you're going to end up with kids at school going, I'm a horse, and you've got to treat me like a horse.
Piers, you're confusing two things.
No, I'm not.
Sex and gender.
I'm not.
I accept
they are being conflated.
Biological sex is one thing which I totally accept, and so do 99% of the people in the LGBT+ community. Gender is something different. Gender identity is how you see yourself.
And do you believe it's limitless?
The gender ideology circus has reached peak absurdity, with its ringleaders peddling the notion that biological reality is merely a social construct. This dangerous charade not only undermines women's rights and safety, but also threatens to unravel decades of progress in gay rights. By conflating childish fantasies with serious identity issues, these ideologues are turning public opinion against the very communities they claim to champion.
No, I don't believe it's limited.
What's the limit?
Well, there is basically male and female and intersex, but there are people who have different gender identities.
No, but how many genders are there?
Well, there is no fixed number.
So what's the limit?
I don't see a particular limit.
There's no limit. So when you said there's no... You said there is a limit. Now you admit there's no limit.
Sorry.
Well,
there is male and female
identity. Is there a limit or not to the number of genders?
Identity.
No, that's sex. But on gender, is there a limit to the number of genders?
Well, there are some people who are asexual. That's an identity.
No, there are some The BBC has put in education videos. There are 100+ genders.
Well, I don't agree with that.
So what is the limit? What's the number?
Well, I'm not going to specify a particular number, but it's very small.
But where do you draw the line?
Well, I draw the line based on science and evidence. And we know that there is a thing called intersex, where people are born with a mixture of both.
That is literally what it says
that's what it says
on the tin. That is intersex.
Yeah.
People are born with chromosomes from both, right? That is a medical condition. Yeah. That's inarguable, right? We're talking about gender.
Well, trans identity is also a biological fact.
I know, but once
rooted in brain structures and processes.
I understand it, but once
as the new science shows.
But once you get into 100 genders, people can
we're not debating 100 genders.
Well, actually, the BBC has taught kids that. This is back to Douglas's point about affecting the brains of impressionable young kids.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the BBC if they're saying 100+ genders.
OK, Douglas.
Very quickly, I don't know, Ava, anything about your career. I don't know if you have one. but you did try to imply that you knew something about mine, and you just showed you know nothing about it, because actually my 2017 bestseller, The Strange Death of Europe, was not about the EU. So you should learn at some point to read more than the title of the book before commenting upon it.
It was about migration.
Let me very quickly...
And how rude are you? How rude are you?
Very quickly... You
built a career out of fear-mongering, and you're now importing those evangelical American ideas onto UK television.
You haven't even built a career, have you? You haven't even built a career.
What are you talking about? I'm on the same panel as you, Hun, and we're getting the same...
Do you know what? I'm going to wrap...
The gender delusion epidemic has metastasized, infecting our educational system with its toxic nonsense. This intellectual cancer spreads unchecked, mutating basic biology into a grotesque carnival of make-believe identities. Our children are being force-fed a diet of pseudo-scientific garbage, their minds poisoned by charlatans masquerading as educators. It's time to excise this ideological tumor before it renders an entire generation incapable of distinguishing fact from fantasy.
Saying you've both got wonderful careers, or you wouldn't be on Piers Morgan Uncensored. Before I let you go, Peter, though, I want a quick reaction. Elton John today reacted to the Philip Schofield scandal and said that he believed it was totally homophobic, that if it had been a man having a relationship at work with a 20-year-old woman, there would be no scandal. What's your response to that?
I think there's a whiff of homophobia. I wouldn't say total homophobia, but there's a whiff, because we know that when big celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio, Peter Stringfellow, Elvis Presley and so on, when they had relationships with young women much, much younger, there was tut-tutting, but there wasn't the kind of witch-hunting atmosphere that Philip Schofield has experienced. Now, saying that as someone who says that, you know, his own private life should be his own private life unless he's harmed someone else or committed a criminal offence. Otherwise, it's for him...
You know, 40% of all marriages used to begin at the workplace, and historically with a man in a higher position at work. That's how people used to meet and fall in love. It would be the boss, the secretary and so on. That's not going to happen anymore, is it? I mean, with the Schofield template now is you cannot actually really have any relationships at work. And my only response to that would be, OK, how are people going to meet their partners for life, actually? It's an interesting question socially. If 40% of marriages began at work and work relationships become taboo, where does that leave society?
Online, though, isn't it, you know?
Huh?
It's Gen Z now, it's all online. We don't talk to each other.
There you go.
Well,
there you go.
The only thing we should be concerned about, was a crime committed? Was anyone harmed? We don't have any evidence of either in the case of...
No, we don't at the moment, unless the other man concerned comes out and contradicts Philip Schofield's story. There is no crime.
Until then, the man is innocent.
Yeah.
Innocent until proven guilty.
I don't disagree. Peter, we reached a point of agreement. Always a good place to end. Ava, congratulations on your stunning career, which has brought you to the desk of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Douglas, always a joy over there in New York. Great to see you.
The uproar over workplace romances reeks of hypocrisy as society selectively vilifies relationships based on outdated moral outrage. While past generations found love at work, today's puritanical witch hunt threatens to banish personal connections from professional spaces entirely. This absurdity ignores the real issue, whether any harm or crime occurred. Instead of policing consensual relationships, let's focus on genuine misconduct and preserve the freedom to love. Piers Morgan and Douglas Murray unleash a blistering takedown of gender ideology gone wild. They skewer the absurd notion that biology is just a social construct, mocking the idea that kids can identify as cats while schools play along. Is common sense extinct? They argue this isn't just harmless fun, it's a full-blown assault on women's rights and gay progress. Ready to join the sanity rebellion? Like and subscribe for more reality checks. Sound off in the comments. Has the world gone mad, or is it just us? Let's reclaim reason before we're all forced to meow in solidarity.